Good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting of the Jacksonville Environmental and Appearance Advisory Committee to order. With that, can I have a review and motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion we approve the agenda.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Agenda adopted. We have minutes before you for the December 1st, 2022 meeting. If you would, take a moment to review those, and I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
That's second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved. Moving on, tonight we have the opportunity to recognize the Christmas decorating contest. So if we could, Miss Grace, if you would come up. So the Christmas decorating contest is an initiative of the Jacksonville Environmental and Appearance Advisory Committee, which is intended to encourage city residents to show pride in their community and light up the city during this special holiday season. It is also meant to be a fun family activity. In past years, the Jacksonville Environmental and Appearance Committee toured all of the sites and selected the winners. This is the first year that the family contest has been open to the public for the public to actually nominate and vote on the winners via social media. So with that, we have 3 families that we would like to recognize tonight. So the first family is the Brailsford family. So if you would come on up. The Brailsford family, we have a picture of their home. They live at 411 Brunswick Drive, and this is a lovely picture of their house from decorating, and that is in Carolina Forest.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Can we get a picture real quick?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's, yeah.
If you will look at that camera real quick. And
Smile.
all right.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold it, so you don't drop it. And I'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Second place was the Raccasanio family.
Good enough.
I probably messed that up. I apologize. Raccassano.
Of course you will.
You gonna hold it? Yeah.
They live at 101 Delos Court in Jacksonville Commons.
There you go. Hold it, it's heavy. It's heavy.
Got it?
And I believe this family is not new to this award. I think you've won in the past, correct?
Yes.
Well, it started, you guys used to do Halloween,
Yep.
and then you did a Christmas.
Yes.
That was back in like 2012, I think is when you started.
Wow.
We've been coming since 2012. For Halloween or one or the other of both. So,
Well, we appreciate what you do for our community.
Yeah.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you very much.
Smile at the
All right.
camera.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll get out of your hair now so you can do business.
Bye.
You get more
Thank
lively.
you.
It's quiet, Sound buzz.
And third place was the Hoops family at 412 Royal Bluff Road in Northwoods. Unfortunately, they were not able to make it this evening. But they definitely cornered the market on inflatables. There's actually a whole nother side. I saw this one. There's a whole nother side to that. So we congratulate them for third place. So we'd like to congratulate each of these families and thank all those that participated. There was actually a fairly large number for the public to vote on. And this is just another way of making Jacksonville a great place to live and raise a family. And we appreciate this opportunity to showcase their the community pride and their achievement. So with that, we will move on. We have a couple of updates for you tonight. We have Jeremy Smith from the Planning Department, and he's going to go over some recent changes that council approved to pond fencing, and then kind of go over some of our landscaping requirements. And we're doing that because, as you're aware, as part of this committee, you have a subcommittee, the tree board. So we think that this is something that's very near and dear to you, and we kind of wanted to share some of the progress that we've made, and Jeremy's going to highlight some of that. So Jeremy?
Thank you. Thank you to the committee for having me. We used to do this a little more often. From time to time, we'd have come in and discuss what the planning department does. Again, I'm Jeremy Smith, senior planner within the planning division, which is inside the planning and inspections department. The planning division reviews all forms of projects in the city, be it from a porch addition to your home to our large shopping centers. And part of the commercial side is our landscaping requirements. And while we enjoy the beautification that they bring from time to time, we do need to look at amending those requirements, either to stay in touch with development times as development changes or the desires of our city council. And one of our recent changes is in regards to fencing and landscaping around those large retention ponds that you see in developments. They look just like a fishing pond sitting out in the front of a shopping center. Most of them, modern ones, due to this history. In 1998, the city adopted pond fencing and landscaping, and at that time amateurized all existing ponds, meaning that the city adopted a schedule that we would require developments to come into compliance with the landscaping at that time, to install trees and shrubs that are in addition or up and above what they already have to do for plantings required by stormwater rules. In 2011, prior to the adoption of the city's Unified Development Ordinance, we identified ponds as two different types, the utility pond or an amenity pond, and they basically function just as they sound. And an amenity would look aesthetically pleasing to the site. And if you are, or for our recent change, if you were in front of your building or within 100 feet of a right-of-way, you could not have a fence. You had to have a certain amount of sloping to your pond sides, have some type of design elements, be it a fountain, lighting, or seating around it to incorporate it into your site to bring beautification, as well as additional landscaping. A utility pond, which was a little more industrial, would be to the rear or to the side of the building, have your standard chain link fence around it if they so desired. But they would not be readily visible from our street corridors. And then in 2020, due to increased development and the location of ponds, we had developments that wanted to do a fence for liability reasons. However, we didn't want them to do the standard chain link fence that the city had gotten used to. And so we amended the ordinance approved by City Council that allowed them to do a decorative fence, not your standard chain link fence, but something nice wrought iron, aluminum, that brought more aesthetic along with the landscaping part of it. And then fast forward to our recent discussions, in light of some state rulings and whatnot, the city looked at getting out of the fence business altogether for ponds. That it wasn't our place to require because of state stormwater rules, that we may be opening up a city liability requiring a fence and leaving it clearly or solely up to the developer. So that was the issue. And again, the concerns were preempted by state rules, the public safety opportunities, aesthetics, that curb appeal that this board strives for in the city, and also cost. If a development didn't want to do a fence because they were trying to save money, then this is an opportunity for them. But with our recent change, if we're not requiring the fence, But if you do, you'll be doing a decorative fence. So up until this amendment, we looked at other municipalities and governments in the area. Onslow County, they do not require a fence. They have no standards. City of New Bern has no fencing, no standards for fencing. Morehead City, no fencing required and no standards. City of Wilmington, the same. City of Fayetteville has some standards and is specifically related to their historic district. I want to give some examples of what we see prior to this amendment, and this is Moose Haven, right there by where the Ruby Tuesdays was taken down and the new Jaggers Burgers is being constructed. This is solid landscaping, but you can still see that chain link fence in the background. This is in Porter's Neck. This is, again, shows what that chain link fence can do with some existing landscaping, how it detracts. Morehead City, while not the best in terms of them taking care of the shoulder, a lack of fence and with a tree there, it does look somewhat better. This is the guardrail, but still without the fencing, it looks like an amenity to site. It looks like a value improvement. This is an example near the New Bern Airport, very industrial, no landscaping. New Bern, where the pond is parked, incorporated aesthetically into an apartment complex. That's a decorative fence that you see there with large trees, no shrubs. Looks very appealing. This is in front of the Dick's Best Buy here. Our landscaping is in full force. It's very mature. It does its job in screening that chain link fence behind it. But it just shows the success of what our landscaping is currently doing. This is a Wilmington example near the Mayfair development. A pond without a fence, some landscaping incorporated in that development. And this is what, with our recent change of not requiring fences, we hope to see as developments move forward in the city of Jacksonville. Another example in Wilmington. This is a more recent New Bern, I believe it's an assisting living community. You can see that it looks, I mean, if we were to tell you it was a stormwater pond, most folks may not realize that. This is the Leland example. This is a very unique example. Those canals within that development, those are stormwater features. They are man-made. They are part of that development. However, they are incorporated without fencing, some landscaping in that housing development. This is a Fayetteville example. This is part of a shopping center area. It has been turned into more of a park setting bridge, but that is a stormwater feature. These are examples of decorative fencing that would be approved if a developer wanted to put in fence around a stormwater pond. We would be looking for at minimum this type of fencing. I believe we've got some examples. This is the Sandy Run Church right here on Hargett Street. They took advantage of our decorative fencing allowances. And this is the Walmart neighborhood market on Carolina Forest Boulevard. They were one of the reasons we got into looking at this change for the ordinance. When they originally developed, this was designed as an amenity pond, but for liability reasons, they installed a chain link fence wrongly. So we worked with them in amending that 2020 amendment of allowing decorative fences. They removed their chain link and installed that decorative fence you see there now. So going back to reasons why we removed the fence requirements, it stems to the Green versus the City of Winston-Salem. It specifically deals with more of the preemption that state rules cannot be strict, or municipality rules cannot be stricter than state rules, or preempt them. I'm sorry, not stricter, but preempt them. And in this case, it was about the fence. Stormwater rules on the state level do not require a fence. So speaking with the League of Municipalities and City Legal Council, we felt that it was something to recommend the City Council to remove that requirement for fences. And so with that, the City Council on January 17th of this year eliminated the fence requirement And these are what we believe will happen. It'll reduce development costs, where developers are no longer required to put in a fence if they do not want to. It'll open up more of those strategic designs that we are hoping that we've seen in other municipalities. And if they do want to do that fence, they have the option of a decorative fence, and then we can choose, work with them on something that is more aesthetically has that curb appeal. And with that change, when you do a decorative fence, right now, we had to require shrubs and large canopy trees. And now they're only, if they do the decorative fence, they only have to do the trees. And then what that does is it cleans up some ground clutter, makes these easier to maintain, and preserves those gentle slopes around the ponds. So I've got another thing I want to add, but I wanted to stop there in case there was any questions on this. Yes, ma'am?
Not a question, but would that be a safety issue when you have these sediment ponds with no fencing around them?
Yes.
With children? Suppose someone would go in there and get drowned, who would be responsible?
So if it's on private property, and that was the concern, that if the city had an option to require it or not require it, then the city could be possibly liable in that situation. So this way, if we don't require the fence, it's solely up to the developer. And then they can determine their liability, put up the decorative fence or not a fence at all. That was one of the conversations we had.
Then lots of times the developers have filed bankruptcy, they're not even in business anymore.
Right.
My husband was in that field, so I know a
gotcha.
little bit about
Yes, ma'am.
it.
Sir, when
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
talking about if you use a decorative fence, shrubs are not required, but trees are.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that dependent on the size and you have to have so many trees per
Yes, ma'am. You have
footage?
to have so many trees I believe it's every 25 feet is a large
25
tree,
feet?
spread them
Do y'all
apart.
have to determine the trees?
We do have a
time?
species list we allow for them, and that way they do not interfere with the type that stormwater requires, so you don't have them fighting for the soil nutrients. And what ultimately that stormwater pond is trying to do is filter that water as it goes through. But yes, ma'am. One thing I wanted to touch on, and this just have an opportunity with the board, is correction of non-conforming sites. We have so many old developments in the city of Jacksonville, and the question is, well, we have all these nice new rules that new developments have to conform to. The new Walmarts, the new Wawas, the new Publix, when they go in, they have to meet our current landscaping code. But what about the old McDonald's or the old gas stations that we have around town? So there are times when if they do a major renovation or they do an expansion, then our non-conforming section of the UDO will trigger requirements to our landscaping, be it parking, landscaping in the parking area, landscaping around the perimeter of the property or at the street side, or buffering when you have a development that may back up to a residentially zoned property or an industrial or vice versa. And again, those triggers are 25% of tax value, expansion of the building up to 50%, or expanding in larger size. So our ordinance will trigger that landscape improvements for that site. And I wanted to show an example. This is the McDonald's at the corner of Onslow Drive and North Marine Boulevard. They did a major renovation several years ago, and while the site was not that far out of compliance at that time, because of the amount of renovations they were doing, it triggered compliance. So if I bounce to, I believe this was a 2022, this was a 2012 image, and then this is the 2022 image. You can see where they had to add a lot of landscaping along Onslow Drive. They had to add 2 landscape islands, and just a quick flip before you can see that by complying, their landscaping on their site was beefed up a lot, and that is an opportunity for us to keep these older sites more aesthetically pleasing and better appearance for the community. So, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have on any of our landscaping standards. And we'll try to make it a point to come back a little more often when we have these type of things, because whether we want to or not, we amend that UDO because we try to stay developer friendly, but at the same time protect the city's interest.
To Jeremy's point, one of the things that, or one of the sites I like to point at is the Bojangles on Highway 24 going toward the front gate. It's technically redevelopment. The Bojangles wasn't there. They tore down a building to construct. But if you look at that site, the way the driveway's channelized, the landscaping that's there, it is completely different than the rest of that development. So you can see that it doesn't happen overnight, but by having good, rules and ordinances to lay that redevelopment out, it brings those things, makes those sites more modern and brings them up to current standards. Yeah. So that's probably one of the easy ones to point out, because as you drive down that road, there's a couple now that have started to redevelop, but they look completely different than, for those of us that have been here a long time, you could pull off of 24 and literally just drive down in front of all those businesses, not on 24. Yeah. So, as we get those, and it's safer, you have channelized areas for vehicles to get in and, off the road and enter back on the road, but it dresses up those sites and makes them look so much nicer.
Yeah. Yes. That was let's see, just because I've been here 13 years, but the Bojangles and then O'Reilly's,
yep.
And the new car wash, the pawn shop, the name fails me. East Pawn Shop,
yep.
And then what was Abra Auto, now Gerber. That was a massive redevelopment of that site, but it definitely, you can see the new development as it comes through, or those sites that because of improvements have to comply. So that landscaping and the curve and the channelization, as Wally mentioned, we'll continue to see that as we see a broad redevelopment of those areas along Lejeune and North Marine, going towards the Walmart. Mm-hmm. And there'll be a few updates later on the planning update, and I was telling Wally earlier today, I think your next meeting is going to be even more bulkier on what planning is approved, because we had a lot of new plans approved during the month of January.
How long have that ordinance been put in place?
The ordinances?
All right, the one that's make the old sites to be brought up, made modern.
I've been here 20 years, and some of that has been there. It's updating those.
We've always had a non-conforming section, but prior to the adoption of the UDO in 2014, the previous version was very cumbersome. I would almost want to say it was a cryptic formula of how to apply it. And so when the city started working on adopting a UDO in the 2011, we actually liked what the new non-conforming section looked in that ordinance, and we adopted it we actually brought it forward prior to adoption of the UDO, because it was very clear cut. If you expand the building by 25%, make the site comply with our current code by 25%. If you double the size of the building, comply 100%. If you do a massive renovation, just like North Carolina building code will require you to upgrade based on your renovation costs, zoning code now says a large renovation will trigger you to do stuff outside. So things can't live forever in non-conformity, that we will have that opportunity to improve them. And so we've had this current very productive version of it, I believe, since 2013.
And it makes it more fair. If you're applying the same formula to everybody, it's very easy to understand and it's very fair. Any other questions for Jeremy? All right.
I appreciate it, folks.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Moving on. Next, we have Michael Connors. As you know, Mr. Kerry Terrell was very involved in this board. He actually retired, And it took us a few months, but we found a replacement. So we have Michael Connors is our new Assistant Director of Public Services. And ironically, he followed Mr. Carey's progression through the city. He started in sanitation.
Follow Carrie Terrell around.
That's right. He's a great man to follow, right?
It's tough to, I like a challenge.
So, but Michael's going to give you an update on recycling. So,
All
Michael.
right. Good evening, everybody.
Good
All right.
evening.
It's good to see you all again. I think I saw you last time talking about trash, and I'm back again talking about trash. So, moving into recycling, just a quick overview. Obviously, City of Jacksonville, we're clean and green. It's been a big push for us. We've had a lot of, in the 4 years that I had sanitation, we made a lot of ordinance changes just to keep the city constantly picked up. I know Dr. Washington were just talking about some debris she saw down by Commerce. The great systems we have going right now with software and our changes to the Chapter 9 ordinance allow us to just pick things up without waiting for somebody to say, oh, it's okay, go ahead and get it. If it's on the curb, if it's left out, you made it my problem and it's going away. We do the same thing with recycling. City of Jacksonville is one of the few municipalities left that's doing recycling free of charge and every week. And you'll see that as we go through this here. So just a quick overview, your sanitation teams out there, roughly doing about 12,000 customers weekly on recycling. Sort of 14,000 recycle bins that get emptied every week in this city. And that does not include the commercial dumpsters. That's just recycling bins, curbside on residential or small businesses. You can see the tons generated there, 1,900 on the residential side, 400 on the commercial side, and your small businesses giving about 200. And again, these are just the cans themselves. So 2,500 tons generated from the city. We've been fourth in the state for the cleanest stream because we do a mixed stream recycling here. And we're proud of that. It takes a lot of work, and it's the residents and the small businesses that comply and follow the rules of recycling that make that possible. So we're pretty happy about that. Recycling disposal. So this was the big shakeup that happened a few years ago. I always thank Carrie for handing this to me as I walked in the door. But our recycling contract of 10 years ended at the same time that the recycling market was really going through an upheaval. I think probably most of us remember the whole debacle with China wasn't taking the plastic anymore and the cardboard. And recycling commodity, it is a commodity, it's traded on a Southeast market, so it has a value. And these companies like Sunoco, who we deal with, they bundle that and they sell it off to whoever's going to use it to make plastics or make paper pulp and get your cardboard bags and all that stuff. So there's a value to it. Previously, we were under a contract, we didn't have to pay them anything. In fact, the great thing was they were just going to pay us because they were getting so much money from those mixed materials that they were handling. Well, when the bottom dropped out of the market, they wanted, they needed to get paid because they were in the negative for processing. Luckily, for a few years, we were protected. They certainly asked, but we said, no, we're not paying you if we don't have to. And when that time came up for our contract to be amended, we did so on a pretty good scale. And we came out really ahead, and that's because the quality of our materials going to Sunoco were so good, and we really are the largest contributor to the Onslow County Materials Reception Facility that's over at the county landfill. So without us, they have no business. So Cameron gave us a good point to start with. So we did a scaled service fee, and it's a little complicated, but I'll go through it here. And we budget $238,000 for recycling disposal. And the way that they charge us is right now in this year of the contract, we're paying $105 for every ton of recycled material that goes to the recycling facility. All right, and from that, they subtract the market price, that weighted average price, and that's what our cost is to pay for that ton. All right, so that price is a moving target. Every month, every quarter, that changes. So the sanitation superintendent, who looks a lot like me, about a month ago, really had to keep an eye on that. So we had an idea of what that was going to be as we got our invoice every month back from Sunoco. Now we've been in the green with that because of the way we negotiated our contract. And in FY22, that weighted average price was actually greater than our service price. So that service cost, so there was no cost to the city in 2022. We were really doing well, and they actually had to refund us a little bit, not much, but it was nice to get a check. And so that was a good thing. This year, the cardboard market has dropped out, it's going down. They've closed a lot of the domestic paper mills and some things that were refurbished earlier to keep up with recycling. Those have been closed down again. I'm sure COVID had something to do with labor cost, all those things. Because of that, that service cost has gone up. We're still way under budget. Right now, we said about 28% of that budget is encumbered just in the third quarter. So we have one more quarter left. We haven't even hit 50%. We're more than half the way through the year. So we're doing really well on the recycling. And again, our materials are great. We're not taking any kickbacks. We're not getting any returned loads or any contaminated fees because we have such a clean stream in the city. And I know that's kind of a lot on that, so are there any questions on how that gets priced out before I click to the next slide here? No? All right. So again, that weighted average price that we talked about, that's a fluctuating market price. It's a traded commodity. We work out of the Southeast region, and so there's guys brokering this stuff with you can picture it with the ticker tapes going and the cell phones, and they're calling everybody trying to find someone to buy these plastics and these paper pulps from the Sunoco company. And that sets that market price. We hold one for a month, and it changes every month. So that's what we come in with. Right now, we're sitting at about $34 a ton is the market value. Compared to about 4 years ago, I think it was about $134 a ton that they were making. So you can see that they've definitely taken a hit, but we're not taking that hit with them. We're incurring a little bit of a cost, but not much. So it's costing us roughly $70 a ton to process the recycling. And that goes up and down, but pretty much that's the average for this last couple months. It's been holding steady at $34 a ton. All right. The current Sunoco contract, like I spoke of, we started out at $100. Well, we started out at $95 for the first 6 months, and then we went to $100, and we're going to be moving into $105 for our service cost in FY 24. So it's just going to go up $5 for the next few years. And as the market improves and fluctuates, if the market is improving, that should be negligible for what we see in our budget. So we shouldn't have any budget issues that we see in the next 3 years with this contract. So that's good. So it's not going to cost the residents anything more. We're still going to be able to provide free recycling bins and continue doing what we do to keep the city clean and green. Revenue share, we do have a revenue share with them at 40% when the weighted average price is greater than the baseline charge for all years. Again, FY22, we got some of that revenue share. It wasn't much. I think total for the year was like about $1,500, but it was better than giving them $1,500. So we're happy. It was the first time in 15 years that we ever got a check from Sunoco. So I was like, I didn't really know what to do with it. I was like, well, where do we put this thing? But it was nice to get it. So we had that. So we hope that as this market improves, we'll see more of that revenue share come back to us, especially as we keep our stream of mixed recycling clean, and more residents come in here and start recycling. One of the great things that we've seen is that people coming in from other communities, and we have a military community around here, so people coming from California where they're paying insane amounts of money to have recycling or participate to the tune of $60 a month just to be in a recycling program if their community has one, or they have to bring recycling to a satellite location, and if they're caught with banned materials in their stream, they actually get fines or liens put on their house. So we're not there. So that's good. So hopefully as these people come into the city, they're used to recycling, they see that it's convenient, that it's easy, that it's free, and that we support it and we encourage it. We'll see our stream stay healthy and clean, and we'll be a valued commodity for the Sunoco company, and they want to keep doing business with us because it helps them in the long run. All right. And then just be clean and green as the environmental appearance committee. You guys want to be on top of how our city looks. What can we do? It's the 3 R's, and that's the big thing about recycling. It's one, reuse, and I always put repurpose. I always think back to my grandmother was renting out Ziploc bags. She wouldn't throw them away. So, right? I mean, you think about it, you thought it was silly at the time, and now you're paying for Ziploc bags. You're like, Nana was on it, man. She knew what was going on. So, plastic is forever, and I try to tell everybody that. It doesn't go away, which is why it's such a great thing, why we make everything out of it, is because plastic is forever. You can make it as thick as you want, as flimsy as you want, and it will last. So, knowing that, if you throw it away, it's gonna hang out forever. If you can reuse it, repurpose it, use that Cool Whip container, give that to somebody for the leftovers that are leaving your house. Don't ever give up your good Tupperware. Use that stuff and do what we can. There's all sorts of hacks on that, so the life hacks as they call them, to reuse things and make them work. And reduce. Don't add to the problem. Reduce what you use. If there's something that can be reusable, the big push was the straws. A lot of people have the metal straws now. We don't want to hurt the turtles, so. If we can do that, and you can reduce what you use for a consumable throwaway product and go to something that is reusable and sustainable, then please do it. And then for what we can't, there's just sometimes you're not going to be able to avoid that. Recycle. And as we tell everybody, just place it in the bin, rinsed and loose. You don't have to scrub it out. Just get the big stuff off of it, which you should want to do anyways. You don't want that sitting in your house rotting, or in the 100-degree Carolina heat rotting, waiting for trash day. So. Place it in the bin, rinsed and loose, and the sanitation team will come by and they'll get it, and we'll get it pushed off where it belongs, and life will be great. All right. Any questions on any of that? No? Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
No problem.
All right. Next up, we have a planning update for you. Actually, we don't. We have adoptive.
They're gonna adopt us.
I apologize. Derek is up next. We have an adoptive program update. I thought the planning update was next.
Yeah, I kind of squeezed in there and made the adoptive program update kind of standard. So, and it's been about 2 adoptions. We're averaging about 1 new adoption a month, and here we can announce that we have what I was pretty excited about was a stream adoption. We don't get too many of these. Because because of the nature of our waterways, it's a little bit more challenging to get those clean. Ian Wells and a group of friends has reached out to Pat Donovan Brandenburg, our stormwater manager, and has adopted Scales Creek for 2 years. And they've already done a cleanup. They've already spent a couple days, and if you can see. Just from the picture here, they're pulling out some pretty big stuff. So it is important that we do have this community involvement, and we're fortunate to have especially some young folks like we have right here that are willing to get out there and get dirty and pick that stuff up. You're all familiar and have all been introduced to Mr. James Wheeler. He does a fabulous job providing litter control in our waterways, and has done it for a very long time. But now he's getting just a little bit of help, and we're all better for it. So happy to say we have a new stream adoption. In addition to that, Corbin Street, Combat Logistics Battalion 2 has recently adopted that street, and they've already conducted their first cleanup of Corbin Street. And since it's a military affiliated organization, it's a 2-year agreement. As you know, the committee has been pretty dedicated and persistent with maintaining College Street and Court Street. Our most recent cleanup activity was held on the 21st of January, where we cleaned up College Street. One of the things that we noticed, or that was discussed during that cleanup, was the area. And if you've been out there in one of these cleanups, you kind of know it's not. It hasn't been that bad. So, and I think the first cleanup that the committee did, there was a lot more trash for us to pick out. I'd like to think that maybe we inspired some of the community to do a better job policing the area, but the truth is the last couple times that we've been out there to pick up trash, it's, for lack of a better word, it's been kind of slim pickings. So there was a discussion had, maybe your time would be better spent in different areas that present themselves to us. You know, like some areas that really do need some help that's within our capability to have an impact. Dr. Washington has pointed out a few areas that we can take a look at, but wanted to bring it up in the discussion here tonight to see how you felt. So instead of continuing to, you know, focus on College Street and Corbin Street, maybe we look at other opportunities in other parts of town to make a difference. In addition to that, it was also suggested that we reach out to neighborhood and community improvement and solicit for some youth involvement. They do a lot of work with the youth council over there, and they got some young ones that I'm sure that would be eager to help. So I'm open to any discussion points you guys might have about, or feelings you might have about looking in other areas that would be more beneficial for our time on a Saturday.
I agree, because I was on the last pickup, and like I said, it was very, very little trash to be picked up.
Mm-hmm.
And in reference to the young kids, I would definitely welcome them, because when I went down, I could hardly get back up. Welcome them. Yes, it all sounds good to me.
Now, what was in proliferation was the pine cones and the pecans,
Yes.
but that wasn't considered trash, but yes.
So right now, I'm looking at the next cleanup in sometime in April or May, and what I'd like to do is work a little bit more closely with Pamela Trafton and Tracy Jackson, and see what the youth council schedule looks like, and see if we can work something out to where we can do some sort of collaboration. And at the same time, we'll keep an eye out for areas that could use some attention. I think Commerce Drive is definitely one that, for one that just jumps out and screams at you that could use some help. And I've also asked some of our other superintendents in the Public Services Department to also keep an eye out for areas maybe I'm not seeing. I don't drive every street every day. But I've reached out to them to let me know what areas could use some attention as well.
Just as an FYI for the future events, if we're talking about doing it with the youth council, if possible, if we could have if we had a larger area, I don't know if we had the funding, but it may be nice to have a little grill some hamburgers or hot dogs on the grill when the kids are finished. But just thinking right off the top of my head, because I'm a high school teacher, probably May will work better than April, because April is prom season for a lot. So I don't think they want to pick up trash and then get dressed for the prom. So, and then with May, you want to make sure that it doesn't fall within Memorial Day weekend. So they're still in, you might have some students that's doing SAT testing, so it can be a little bit challenging for our students with those 2 particular months, but nothing that isn't impossible. But I think something to drive them other than just picking up the trash, if we could have like a little mini kick out, cook something down on Riverwalk, possibly by the water. You're at the Kerr Street Recreation Center, possibly.
We'll look into it,
Okay.
and we'll see what we can come up with.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And if you're out driving about and you see an area you think we should add to it, or you wonder if it's been adopted, if you'll send that over to Derek, we'll follow up. And a lot of times what we see is that the cleaner you keep an area, the cleaner it stays. It's almost like once something starts accumulating, it's open season. So Some of it is what, if we go in and we get it cleaned up and then we could get somebody to come in behind us and adopt it and just kind of keep it that way, it may stay clean longer. All right. Now for the development update. So, Miss Grace Harbrick, sorry.
That's okay.
Is tongue-tied today. It's not normally a problem, is it, Dr. Washington? So, she is your representative to the planning board, and tonight we'd like to give you just kind of an update from November and December. So I'll go over a few of these that you can find. We have Biscuitville has discussed the location on Gum Branch Road. To be a little more specific, they're discussing the corner of Williamsburg Plantation and Gum Branch Road. So kind of if you're facing the new Circle K to the left of that. We also have Bubba's 33 in Dario. Oh, is that how you say that? Dario. There we go. On North Marine and Parkwood Drive, I'll be honest, I do not know what that is. And then we have Blackbeard's Triple Play, looking at the former Twin Peaks restaurant, so redevelopment there on Western Boulevard. In December, we had One Place Jacksonville. That is a 35,000 square foot office building that'll be built on land that the city sold to One Place. And I guess that's, they kind of house the Partnership for Children. So, and that will be kind of near Fire Station 4, if you know where Fire Station 4 is in the Commons right now. CDW Holdings is a 4,000 square foot vehicle display area. And this area was rezoned by City Council to corridor commercial. And then we have Top Shelf, which is on Yacht Road, and it's a 11,000 square foot retail establishment, kind of next to Burger King. And I think somebody mentioned that this may be something like a Five Below or something like that.
It is.
So I had never heard of Top Shelf, but when I asked, that's what somebody told me that it was similar to. And then Highway 55 Restaurant has discussed a standalone location for a site on Western Boulevard, but I don't know which site that is. So that's kind of your update from November and December. But you heard that Jeremy said they received a lot of applications, and a lot happened during the month of January. So we'll have that for you in your next meeting. Any questions on any of that? I did find in my notes that the Bubba's 33 and Dario is looking at the old Garris Evans property on North Marine Boulevard. So that would be a redevelopment site also. So lots of good things happening in Jacksonville. Any questions or comments on those?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there ever any concern about getting some industry here?
That is a concern and a goal and has been for a long time. What I will say is there's some efforts. We do have Stanadyne that's been here for a long time. There are some efforts right now by Stanadyne to reinvest and maybe even grow a little bit. So that's very good news. That is something that we continually look at and try to encourage, but it is difficult. It really is. All right. With that, any open discussion?
I got a question. Something that I didn't know. The city actually sells some of the property? Because that was mentioned a moment ago.
Yes, sir. So the city, back in the 90s, when I was in high school, just throw that out there. So back in the 90s, the city council really had the forethought to purchase the commons. And I don't remember the total acreage, maybe 400 acres, I believe, in the commons area. And some of that became the recreation center, some of that became the schools. But the city still owns a large area there that is undeveloped. Matter of fact, if you know where Richard Ray Park is beside Gateway North, the other side of that is wooded, and they just connected a road through Marketplace Drive that connects to Publix. That's where the city's building the new fire station for. All of that wooded area is owned by the city. And it was area that was identified that could be sold off because it's getting closer to the commercial portion of Western Boulevard. And ironically, I can't quote the exact numbers, but I want to say that when we sold some land along or entered into contract for some land closer to Western Boulevard, it was actually at almost the same price per acre as what we paid for the entire commons purchase. So it was a very good investment for the city. So we do sell off land. The one place is we sold that land, but it's also in partnership. We're very involved in Partnership for Children and everything that one place does. Our police chief is heavily involved in that. So that was a great opportunity also. So, and then the city has actually sold land in Williamsburg Plantation. There was parkland that was given. It was about 17 acres when Williamsburg Plantation was originally platted. They had to, at that time you either had to give land or pay a fee in lieu of giving land for recreation purposes. So they gave the land, and because of the acreage, it really wasn't something that the city, there wasn't great opportunities there. 17 acres is a lot, but when you consider fields or a facility, it's just not a lot of land for that. But the city really recently purchased 400 acres behind Williamsburg Plantation, and as such, they actually sold that 17-acre piece. And I think the plans are for somebody to construct a private school. I think it was bought so that they could construct milestones there. So
I kind of threw it out there because the Masonic Lodge and the temples here in Jacksonville, we're looking forward to building a temple that would be, how would you say it, in accordance with what else is happening here in Jacksonville, beautifying places. Because most of the lodges are much older. Right. And so if we could build a temple, which is a Masonic complex, that would be awesome and bring some pretty interesting things to Jacksonville.
we have, there are certain requirements for the city to sell land. I don't know all of those. The best thing, if there is city land you're interested in, the best thing would be talk to the city attorney. And then, I guess I would be remiss not to mention that we do have one area that we acquired with the sole purpose of selling, and the idea, and that's the Jacksonville Business Park, which is located off of Williamsburg Parkway, and there's a road that goes in called New Frontier Way that was actually named by the Youth Council, and there's 5 to 15 acre sites in there to sell off, and the idea was that it wouldn't be industrial, but it would be a business park that would generate jobs. And on some of that land, the Miller Rock College was built, and then across from that is, and I don't want to get it wrong, but Carolina Orthopedics or something like
Carolina
that.
Orthopedics, Jacksonville Supply.
Yeah, so it's that those two corners were actually part of that business park. And we are working with Jacksonville Economic Development Commission for generating stormwater improvements and other things that will make that park even more attractive. Any other open discussion or questions? All right. future discussion topics that we have for you, we talked about the stormwater pond fencing tonight. We identified that. We have Arbor Day coming up. That's on April 28th. So we have those of you on the tree board, we will be involving and inviting the rest of you to Arbor Day. And then we will keep you updated on new development. Is there anything else that you can think that you would like for us to put onto your agendas for future topics? Yes, ma'am.
If we could have sanitation come back and just give us an update of what is recyclable and what isn't, because it changes so much that people get confused.
Absolutely. We can certainly do that.
No problem. We can do that, and just so you know, if you want to reference it on your own, it is on the sanitation website. So if you go to City of Jacksonville, nc.gov/sanitation, you can find a lot of information there. And we update that as often as possible. We find that it takes a long time to disseminate that information and then to get people into the practice of doing something new. So some things we just kind of don't touch. Like, if they're lessening the restriction and it's not, they're going to keep us out of compliance, we may just leave it alone until it becomes, because it's just not a problem. But it is up there and we keep it updated with everything that's there. So, but I will definitely get that compiled and back to you. It may be the new guy. But if not, I'm happy to present that to you all.
You're on the clock.
Any other comments or thoughts? All right.
When's the next meeting?
The next meeting is April 6th at 6 p.m. All right. If there's no other open discussion, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. All right, we have a motion. Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, we're adjourned.